Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew, that even as we hurt, we hoped, that even as we tired, we tried, that we'll forever be tied together, victorious, not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it at its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain: if we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the windswept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can't find a fighter, but I see it in you, so we're gonna walk it out. Ooh, mountains, we're gonna walk it out. Isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting harder to breathe, and I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll take the world to its feet. Move, mountain, bring it to its feet. waves, I will rise in spite of
Good morning, everyone. We hope you enjoyed our opening videos as we gave homage to the inauguration of our new president. And we highlighted two powerful women who gave us some powerful messages, both in poetry, in spoken word, and in skating and in song. So welcome and thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the DC Federation of Democratic Women's informational workshop on the 411 on the Plum book and presidential appointments. We have the tea, and the tea is hot. Information is power, and we have some key information to share with you today. My name is Dorinda White, and I am the president of the DC Federation of Democratic Women. We are one of 34 state federations, including Puerto Rico, under the National Federation of Democratic Women. We have 3 seats on the Democratic National Committee, and we are an affiliate organization of the DC Democratic Party. Founded in 1972, our mission is to support, train, and prepare women for elected office and to support women candidates at all levels of the Democratic Party. So we have a few housekeeping items, or I could also call them rules of the day. Basically, all participants will be muted except for the invited speakers. We ask that all videos be turned off so that we can focus on the speakers and what they are sharing. You are strongly advised to grab a writing pad and pen to take down notes as our guests share their information. Additional resource information will be shared at the end of the workshop, so be ready to take a snapshot of the last 2 slides. The event is being recorded and will be made available on our DCFDW website and our Facebook page. So just to give you a brief overview, the workshop is timed to last from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. So we invite you to ask your questions in the chat. You can start asking them now, but you don't know what to ask, do you? But we have a DC Federation Democratic Women member who will capture your questions and then may be posed to our guest speakers. So feel free to use the chat throughout this workshop and chat amongst yourselves. As I mentioned, I am the president of the DC Federation and your moderator for today. So please note our agenda, and I need to take away the chat box so I can see it too. So to kick off the theme of today's event, we've got the tea, and the tea is hot. Some of our members will be holding their tea or coffee cups as we show how women over the years have gathered at high tea events to share and organize over issues important to their homes, families, and communities. The agenda for today is, as you see the welcome, the high tea, we'll go to the Plum book. We will start a high-level discussion, peeling back the layers. We'll do a summary, points to remember, and get started today. Key activity links and resources. Next slide, please. So with that, we introduce, So we invited Zilla Jackson Wesley, who has coordinated many a high tea event, to share the history of high tea and how and when women organize, even over tea, we win. So Zilla, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Dorinda. Good morning. It's so beautiful to see everyone this morning as we talk a short history on tea. I hope everyone is sipping tea, that they have a cup with them, and it could be a mug, it could be your favorite cup. This is one of my favorite cups that my mother had, and some of them are heirlooms. And you can have your favorite tea. I'm sipping on hibiscus tea this morning with your sugar, your cinnamon stick, or whatever you enjoy. So, as you know, tea has a wonderful, wonderful history with particularly women. And we wear our gloves, we have our good manners as we go through our tea event. I have my gloves on today. Tea started in the 14th century in China, and then it moved to the 16th century to Europe, and England just fell in love with tea. And then it became a whole industry of cups, tea, and containers for tea. And then it was in around the 16th century decided that porcelain were the great warmers for tea. So what happened is that high tea was 8:30 at night in England, and they would come home and eat for the evening on the high tea. But later, because tea was so expensive, the upper class people took tea on and moved it to the afternoon and had tea as part of a meal that held them over until dinner time. And high tea was, of course, your fine china, and then you started inviting friends over. And then your friends, and then you would have sconces, finger sandwiches, all kinds of sweets. And then you would do things, always your latest fashion, of course. Then you would chat, little gossip with your friends, but then a lot of organizing was done. Job sharing, information about families, voting rights information, even powerful information about religion was discussed. Racial issues and concern, and generally just lifting each other up. Strong and powerful women would get together. And of course, even with all that was going on, with a little scandal and a little gossip, you would also have your culture in place at all times. Then tea came down to middle class groups. And middle class people said, this is an economical way to entertain several friends. And so they would take their teapots out, and then it was a lot more inexpensive than having dinner. Then the sandwiches without crust, again, the scones and pastries, and people in their homes got very creative, and all kinds of teas would have topics involved, and then always a good cake. In the 1900s, the hotels began having teas. And, you know, in our area, there were a lot of famous hotels that did this. Also department stores and tea salons. And the menus got even fancier. Sometimes they had orchestras involved, soft music, and tea dancing. It was seen as the right place to be with the right people. Then the trend was set, and we started to hold parties to suit almost any occasion. Teas in the drawing room from 10 to 20 people, 3 to 4. Teas in the garden, teas at home, tea receptions, sometimes up to 200 people. In the tennis areas, croquet, women's clubs, charities, suffrage groups, alumni associations, teas as meetings and fundraisers. And later, champagne was a part of the teas. Groups like the National Association of Colored Women, women's clubs, Madam J.C. Walker, Nanny Helen Barrels, all kinds of groups would come together for these great teas for political reasons and for discussions and fundraising to keep some of the things that they had going on funded. In our city, the Jefferson Hotel and the Willard Hotel, some of the few hotels that were experts in teas. And then they were also chefs that became, and still now, experts, and teas are their specialty. So teas now are huge fundraisers for organizations to cover all types of organizational needs and special programs. And we look forward to a lot of events in teas in our area. And some of them have name recognition like the Pink Hat Tea. And also with teas now, they're corporate sponsors that have to be a part of this because they feel as though this is a group that you want to capture of women that are politically astute and educated and have the kind of interests of their communities that they want to be a part of. Teas are big business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zilla, for that wonderful presentation on high tea and why we drink tea today. In fact, I have my A Woman's Place is in the House and the Senate and the National Political Congress of Black Women, the coffee cup, tea cup that was made back in 1994.
Love it. Wonderful. And thank you so much for having me.
Yes,
you.
thank you for joining us, and thank you
Welcome.
for sharing the importance of tea and using it as a gathering, as a moment of gathering.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Zilla. So now we will hear from the woman who holds the highest elected office in the District of Columbia, our own Congresswoman, Eleanor Holmes Norton. She could not be with us today in person, but she did send in her remarks. So let's hear from Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton.
My thanks to the DC Federation of Democratic Women as you embark upon another high tea, virtually perhaps. But I want to thank you for your very diligent work in promoting African American women for Democratic administrations, for keeping track of the Plum Book for appointments, and putting the needed pressure on elected officials to make sure that that Plum Book shows an increasing number of African American women being appointed. I do want to indicate that I think we finally have a president in Joe Biden who understands the importance of appointing African American women to high positions. If I can give you just some examples of his earliest appointments. Let's start with my colleague from the House of Representatives, Marcia Fudge, who has been appointed to head the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, or if you want to go into the White House itself, we can look at Susan Rice, who has been appointed the White House Domestic Policy Council Director, a very important position. Another example is Celicia Rouse, who is the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors. Please note that these examples from the new administration are not examples of positions that you would expect women in particular to be appointed to. And please note that I have not called out all of them. Moreover, the vice president has been equally vigilant in making sure that her staff includes African American women. I want to thank the DC Federation of Democratic Women for naming me your 2011 Outstanding Democratic elected officials. That's an honor I will forever hold dear. But more than that, I want to thank you for the diligence of your work in assuring that Black women are appointed to this administration. My pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Norton. And next, we're going to have our own local at-large DC Councilwoman, Anita Bonds. Anita, the floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. And I think it's still morning, so good morning, everyone. I've been charged with doing a 3-minute guide to organizing for achievement. And it's food for thought, really, on becoming a leader that makes things happen for the betterment of the community. And I think that's what good trouble is, if you get my point. There are 3 parts to it. Part A, getting involved. Part B, following your calling. And part 3, or C, performance measures and holding yourself accountable to your truths. Let's talk a little bit about the first part, getting involved. The starting point, everyone has a starting point or beginning, whether it's in your neighborhood, through your churches, your associations, your causes, events, membership organizations, sorority, are your school activities, perhaps, or with your family enterprise. And the important thing is that you will be exhibiting interest and commitment, perseverance, and you'll bring closure to whatever it is that you become involved in. Closure in the sense that you always want to see an issue from its beginning to its end. Don't leave like dangling particles out there. Don't leave stuff hanging out there for you to later on say, I'll get back to it. I'm going to clean it up later. It doesn't work like that. It never does. We never have an opportunity to go back to these matters. Some of us are naturally inclined to care about others, like rooting for the underdog. Let's say you're at a performance or a sporting event or attending maybe a musical recital, and you see an individual is doing their best, but the applause is light because the performance simply was lacking the anticipated results. Some of us are internally driven, highly competitive, and propelled by our inner compass to achieve a set of goals, to win. And then some of us learn to be activists, through our great role models that we follow. We aspire to, let's say, lead, to succeed at our calling. We follow our calling. You must follow your calling, your aspirations, your internal compass, and be true to yourself, knowing that each of us can be an activist, while not all of us will develop into a politician. All of us can be an advocate, but not all of us will develop into an issue wonk or an expert or a renowned leader. Along the way, your career trajectory, life journey, your work is constantly evaluated by your family, friends, foes, coaches, bosses, co-workers, and the public at large. Your decisions should be grounded in data, anecdotal information, expert opinions, and take into consideration current laws, regulations, and of course, shaped by public opinion. You have to hold yourself accountable. It is the one task that you will find the most reward from. It's tough. It's tough to criticize yourself, but you must do that. And know that it's showing who you really are is who the public will believe in. There's an old saying, you can fool everyone some of the time, but not everyone all of the time. So the principles that I try to follow and I encourage everyone to follow, and they have been true to me, is collaboration with others, cooperation, charity, courtesy, compassion, and using your emotional as well as your academic intelligence. So I think that was 3 minutes, and that's the guide in 3 minutes. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councilwoman Anita Bonds, for coming and joining us today and sharing your words of wisdom on the importance of leadership and the accountability that accompanies it. So you and I both know how important that is. We've traveled some similar roads together over the years. So I thank you so much for joining us today. So moving right along, the next item on our agenda is the Plum book, the 411 on the Plum book. So many of you do not know that a book is published every 4 years, shortly before the start of each presidential administration. Every 4 years after the presidential election, the United States government policy and supporting positions, commonly known as the Plum book, you'll see it's the color of the plum, is published alternately by a designated Senate committee and a House committee. It's called the Plum book because its original hard copy form was a hardcover plum colored book, and the name stuck. So the book is a compilation of all the presidential appointee jobs. You can Google it, download it, or order the hard copy from the GSA. What we're going to do is give you a brief overview of what you're going to find inside and how you may use it to get to a political appointed position or to actually find positions that you may not know about, but exist in the federal government. So the Plum Book has a listing of up to 9,000 federal civil service leadership and support positions in the legislative and executive branches of the federal government that may be subject to non-competitive appointment. For example, positions such as agency heads. We've been hearing how Biden has started putting together members of his cabinet. Those are agency heads and their immediate subordinates, policy executives and advisors, and aides who report to these officials. So the duties of many of such positions may involve advocacy of administration policies and programs, and the incumbents usually have a close and confidential working relationship with the agency head or other key officials. So what positions can be found in the Plum Book? You'll see on the slide in front of you that the first one is the executive schedule, the senior executive service or general positions, senior foreign service positions, Schedule C positions, which are positions which the president may decide to exclude from competitive service. You will not find SES positions designated for career reserved, Schedule A and Schedule B positions, and competitive service positions can usually be found on usajobs.gov and by going online and looking for federal government jobs. I know this sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo, but in reality, once you look in the book, whether you download it or you go online and download the PDF or buy the actual book, you'll be able to go through the fine print. It's a lot of information, and use the codes that are inside the book to identify and clarify what all of these positions mean. Next slide. So you may ask, how long does the hiring process take? Well, we're going to find out later about that, but it can take 3 to 6 months to process an applicant. And since the Biden-Harris administration got off to a late start due to a lack of information from the previous administration, it may take longer. So be prepared. The Plum Book is usually available to the general public on December 5th. This time, it was available in mid-January. So everyone's working a little bit behind the 8 ball and trying to play catch up, because once the book was published, everyone had to then scurry and hurry to find out what positions were vacant, which ones were ending, and to find out which ones were, they had added additional positions over the 4 years that the Trump administration existed. So you may apply and not hear anything for a while, but you can be contacted up to a year or more, as some appointments are for 4 years. Next slide. Please mute yourself. So fundamentally, do your research. There's a lot of competition for presidential appointments. The following slides have some data from the 2014 data gathering that was done during the Obama administration. And you should have a tiered approach. Whether you identify your primary position that you're looking for, you should have a second and third choice. In other words, cast a wide net, as there are many who are doing the same. So just to share, based upon the demographic data that we've gathered, women were only 33.95% of the hires, while minorities were between 1 to 11% of the hires. Numbers do not lie. Next slide. A few more data points. The Department of Defense and Homeland Security had the highest number of senior executive service hires, and 51% came from the DMV, which means not everybody was living here when these positions came open, but when the new administration came in, people traveled from all over the country to come to the District of Columbia to fill those positions. And they settled in DC, Maryland, and Virginia for the most part. Next slide, please. So here's a snapshot of Plum Book listings. It shows the location, the position, the name of the incumbent. You'll see it says Washington, DC, administrator, vacant. Many were vacant and were never filled in the Trump administration. The type of appointment in this instance is a PA or presidential appointment. The specific pay plan, which was EX or executive. The level, grade, or pay, level 111 here, for example. The tenure of the position and when it expires. That means there's a position on this form here that ended on October 30th, 2014. So this is just an example of what you will find in the Plum book. It is your job to do the research. Let's say you want to work in the Department of Homeland Security. Identify the position, but go and look at the budget of the agency to make certain that that job has been included in the budget allocations. It will take some digging, but you may find that golden nugget and be able to go for it. Next slide, please. So to sum it up, presently, the Plum book lists up to 9,000 jobs. Your competition is right here in DC. Many campaign staff have moved to DC to be in the pipeline for appointed positions, and they are ready to work and have the connections after having worked on Democratic campaigns. You already live here. You should shoot your shot and go for it. Our next guests may go into further detail based on their individual experiences, but we can say, check your credit history, pay off major outstanding debts, or be ready to explain why you won't sell your soul to pay off a $100,000 debt. Scrub your credit history and pay off major outstanding debts, or be ready to explain why those outstanding debts are still there. Scrub your personal and professional social media accounts. Your Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, Twitter accounts shouldn't have any information on them which may reflect negatively on the hiring entity. Your best bet is to make them all private. Google yourself to see what the internet may say about you when a hiring entity researches your background. If you need to correct any negative information, the time to take care of that is now. Next slide, please. So that's our brief overview of the Plum book and how it may facilitate you as you are looking for your position, either as a presidential appointee, or you can be appointed to work in one of the cabinet agencies. It doesn't all end up in the White House. You could go and work at HUD or at the Commerce Agency, and you can be a presidential appointee in that environment. You're basically looking out for the interests of the current administration, and you are performing the duties that the cabinet agency has hired you to do. So today we are fortunate to have 3 women who have been through the presidential appointee experience. They are all local Democratic women who moved from local DC positions to being appointed in both the Clinton and Obama administrations. 2 of them are also members of the DC Federation of Democratic Women. So with that, I'd like to give you a brief bio of the 3 women who have graced us with their presence and who will share their pathways and experiences as presidential appointees. Our first guest will be, I'm sorry, skip the page here, will be, I think I have, okay, Reta Jo Lewis. Reta Jo Lewis served in the Obama-Biden administration under Secretary Clinton in the State Department as the first ever special representative for global intergovernmental affairs in the first term. She was then appointed as a special assistant to the president for political affairs to President Clinton in the first term in the White House. Currently serves on the leadership team at a major U.S. transatlantic think tank, the German Marshall Fund of the United States, and is a senior fellow and director of congressional affairs. She also serves as an elected at-large committeewoman for the DC Democratic State Committee and a member of the DC Federation of Democratic Women. Our next guest that you'll hear from today is Recio Harvey. She is president and CEO of the Harvey Hudson Group. She was a presidential appointee as the assistant administrator of U.S. Small Business Administration, Office of Women's Business Ownership in the Obama administration. She then was a mayoral appointee as the director of the Small and Local Business Development and the former president of the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And she is a member of the DC Democratic Women's Club. And our last but not least is Theola DeBose. Theola DeBose is a career coach and founder of J Skills, a platform and community that makes it easy for professionals to change careers. She served in the Obama administration as Director of Communications at the National Endowment for the Humanities. She was also a top communications leader at the DC Public Charter School Board and a reporter at the Washington Post who wrote about DC education, public safety, and local communities. She's been invited to join us today because she serves individuals and organizations with workshops, courses, and consulting to help them tell their story with purpose so they can get found, get funded, or get hired. So we have a nice group of women who are going to share their stories with us today. So ladies, I have Reta Jo, Anna, and Theola present. Ladies, can you unmute yourselves?
Yes. Good morning,
Anna
Anna here.
And hi, Anna. And then we have Reta Jo.
Yes.
And we have Theola.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Okay, you all look bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So I'm going to start off with a few questions and give you an opportunity to basically share with our listeners what the process was and what happened in your life that led you to being a political appointee. So I'm going to start off with Reta. Reta, when did you know that you were under consideration for a political appointment, and what was the process? You served in both the Clinton and Obama administration. How did you transition from one to the other?
Well, first of all, Dorinda, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here along with Theola and Anna. It is always an honor to be with the Federation of Women and to be with your audience this morning. You know, I just wanted to say I brought my teacup and I brought my cookie. So I just want the audience to know that I am in compliance and that it was very interesting to hear from the historians and from your prior guests to talk about the fact of leadership and to talk about how tea time has now become very important in so many people's lives. You know, for me, the questions you raise is like, when did you know, or how did you know? Throughout my career, it has always been about service. And so I have been someone who have been actively involved in federal, state, and local politics, separate from being a practicing attorney. And so having been involved on the first term of Bill Clinton's, I was actually in the campaign. I was in the campaign full time. And I had the opportunity to stay in Little Rock, Arkansas at the time when the president had first gotten elected. And there was a small team that worked with him out of the governor's mansion. And I was a lead advance for him. And so I knew that not only was I working to elect the president, but I also wanted to serve my country, and I wanted to seek a political appointment if that was possible. And so I learned early on, after we had worked throughout transition, that I was asked what types of positions was I interested in. And so I went on to kind of outline some roles that I wanted. And I wanted to serve the president. I had worked with him directly, and I wanted to serve in the White House. And so I was fortunate the first time in January, after the inauguration, to move directly into the White House, working for the president as a special assistant to the president for political affairs. And I stayed with him for over 3 years. But the most recent iteration is in the Obama administration, when I was asked to become the special envoy, the special representative for global intergovernmental affairs. And I had, again, been a practicing attorney and someone who had been doing a significant amount of work in different agencies as I was practicing law. And then I also, again, worked in the campaign. And I would say that it was coupled with your experience, my background, having also worked during the campaign, worked in transition. I had been a part of the Obama-Biden transition team as the director of business outreach. And so I went into the United States State Department with Secretary Clinton, and I received my appointment around March of that year. And so to go to your next question, it's that you never know when the opportunity is going to come. All you can do is just work toward whatever the goal is. But keeping in mind that it's not about me, it's about the service that you want to have to your country. It's about the service that you want to have to the people of the United States. And it's about the service that you want to have to the president. And so keeping all of that in mind and having, had the education, had the experience, having had worked also in transition and the campaign, you just have to remain hopeful that with all of that, that will lead you in the direction of the continued career direction of federal service that you're seeking.
Okay, thank you, Rita, and thank you for kicking us off with that wonderful information. And I'd like to go next to Anna. Looking at your bio, and I saw that you served the longest in the Obama administration, quite a long time, from 2009 to 2014. How did you make your way there? And what were the skill sets that you had that allowed you to transition into your position? What was your experience?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you. I do have my tea, and I'm drinking ginger tea, which a little bit, it kind of like tickles your throat a little bit, but thank you so much. Thank you, Dorinda, and the DC Federation of Democratic Women for inviting me. And I really love your question because I would never in my life had expected to be serving the first African-American president of the United States, being a humble girl from Mexico. This was amazing. So how did I get here? I got here because I decided when my children were little that I just needed $5,000 to pay for school for my son. And the only way I could do it was to create my own business. So I started translating. I created my company, and I'm gonna fast forward. I grew my company to 75 employees. Then I moved here. That was back in Houston. Thank goodness I'm not there now. And I moved to this area, and I actually became the president of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And it's a big leap, and I can tell you the story of how it happened. But there were some things that I learned when I was building my business, that as women, as a minority woman, I didn't know. I didn't have access to capital for my business. So I learned that on my own. I made mistakes. I used credit cards I shouldn't have done. So I made several mistakes that throughout my professional career, I second guessed why it was so difficult to be a successful business person. So I became the president of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And 1 year, 11 months later, President Obama wins the election. And Rita, we met back then. We met back then when you were doing these listening sessions with President Obama and being the president of the Hispanic Chamber. They asked me to come and talk about the state of Hispanic businesses in the country. So I did my thing, that it was, difficult to get capital, difficult to get government contracts and all these things. And I really thought I was going to meet the president, but the president wasn't there, but Rita was there, and which is great. So that was a fantastic, I thought it was going to be it was literally a 5-minute conversation. That's it. And I walked out, but I thought that was fantastic. Then I was calling again to talk about the state of women business ownership in the United States. So I pretty much switched Hispanic for women because it was the same thing. Difficulty accessing capital, difficulty accessing contract, difficulties everywhere. But anyway, so I had 3 of those very quick interviews, or just representing the Chamber of Commerce. And this is something that we're talking about the Plum book, and I'm very familiar with the Plum book. But it was not the Plum book that opened the door for me. It was those 3 instances, those 3 conversations that I had with the transition team when they called me and they actually offered me to come and join the administration. And they gave me a particular, this specific job, which was the assistant administrator for the Office of Women Business Ownership at the SBA. So sitting there, going for my interview with what then was the she wasn't quite appointed yet, but Karen Mills was going to be the administrator, sitting there with her and trying to see how I am going to help if this happens, because I wasn't hired yet, how I'm going to help President Obama do this. And suddenly everything made sense. Every single difficulty that I went through to build my business was that what gave me the insight on how I'm going to do this job well. I am not here to tell you to come and tell women business owners, you should do this, you should do that. I knew how it felt. I knew how I was struggling. And my mission was to help President Obama succeed. My personal mission, helping women business owners succeed. So I was not prepared for the magnificent surprise that was to be offered this job. And then comes the hard part. How I'm going to do this? How I am going to do this, because I don't know anything about the federal government. And I have a couple of pointers for you. But so this is how I got to serve in the Obama administration. That's a very quick recap of that. But I don't know, I'm going to stop there, and then we can just give an opportunity to everybody else to speak. But I'm happy to continue my story. But that's how I got there.
Okay. Thank you. We're going to go to Theola next, and then we're going to go and ask some other questions to draw all of that out. So be prepared. Okay, so Theola, you were a Washington Post journalist and district government employee. What made you aspire to be a presidential appointee, and how did it happen?
Thank you, Dorinda. Thank you to the Federation for the invitation. And it's wonderful to be next to such esteemed women like Reta and Anna and everyone here, because I know that everyone here is a superstar in their own way. I want to pick up on what Anna was talking about how she was doing the work and she was focused on doing the work and then building her business. And so I know that all of you are listening and saying, okay, can that happen to me? Do I need to go start a business tomorrow? Is that what you're saying? Okay, can that happen to me? I need to go find my way to work on a campaign. Do I need to do that? And so what I'm here to tell you is that all of our stories are different, and maybe that's frustrating, but what is in common is that all of us were head down doing the work and nothing is wasted. For me, what happened was literally one day I'm sitting at my desk at 14th and Columbia Road, because that's where our office was, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine who I hadn't spoken to in a while, but knew him well. I knew that he had left journalism to go work in the federal government. And he said, hey, have you heard, hey, how are you? Have you heard of the agency, the National Endowment for the Humanities? And I said, actually, I have. It's a small agency. It is an independent agency. It's focused on arts and culture. And basically, I used to joke and say that it's a bank, because what NEH does, and its sister agency, which you may have heard of, is NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts, but we were the Humanities Endowment. And what we did was that we gave out grants to cultural institutions so that they could continue to do their work. And so we were, as the government, publicly funding history and museum exhibits and professors who were doing research. And so I said, yeah, of course I know them. They do all this stuff that I love. And then my friend said, okay, well, you are going to get a call from the White House. Now, this is where me being a journalist, I don't get too worked up about things until they actually happen, right? So I'm just saying, okay, that sounds good. I'll talk to you later, right? And let's see what happens. I kid you, no less than 5 minutes later, I get a call. It says restricted. Oh, this is so-and-so from the White House. And I'm like, okay, this is actually happening. So I say that to say that you can be totally clueless and this can happen to you, because behind the scenes, my friend who called me, his wife was someone who worked in the administration. I had no idea about that. I would just see her socially. I would see her on the playground. We would just talk. And it turned out that she had some responsibility for finding talent. And so she was the one who said, oh, hey, so what is Theola up to, right? And so what is the lesson there? The lesson there is that if you are someone who has a reputation as being someone who is valuable, someone who is good to work with, someone who is a nice person, then when something comes up, your name can be, you know, what do they say? You are whispered in rooms before you even know it, right? Like your name is being tossed about before you enter. And so one thing that I want to emphasize is that I could have gone into the process saying, well, I haven't worked on a campaign, which I haven't. I don't really have direct political experience, although I certainly can say that working with charter schools was a trial by fire political education. But I didn't see myself as less than because I was coming from local government into the federal government, right? I didn't think, well, you know, do I have enough experience or am I good enough because I'm just at the DC Public Charter School Board? One thing I want to emphasize, and I do this with the folks I coach through career transitions, is that your experience is your experience, and the skills that you have is based on your experience. And so you have to tell the most interesting, exciting story about your skills. And so when I got questions during the interview process, like, well, you know, things can get very political. This is a political job. What's your experience about that? And I say, well, let me tell you about working in this arena and how political the topic of education is. And I have XYZ, ABC example. And so definitely focus on what we're saying in the big picture about how we have different experiences, the Washington Post, working in high levels of small business, right? Those things help to get us there, but our ability to be people who are known to be reliable, trustworthy, earnest, having a good reputation, that was also essential to being recognized as someone who the administration wanted to get behind, because your moral character is as important as your skills. Theola, I'll leave it there.
Theola, that was some very interesting information, and I knew when I reached out to you that you would have some a different take on how you arrived at your role as a presidential appointee. My next question, I'm just going to throw it out to you, all three of you, and you can decide amongst yourselves. Just start, you know, and just say, one of the questions I have is, if you were to give words of advice to aspiring political appointees who are DC locals that worked on local and national campaigns, but have not rubbed elbows with higher ups of the Biden campaign, how would you suggest they prepare themselves to get into the appointee pipeline?
I can take that first because there is power in the cold reach out and the cold email, the cold LinkedIn note. But just like Dorinda was saying when she was going through the Plum book, you have to do your work. You have to do your research. And so it starts with you. There's so many individuals who come to me and they say, how do I get a job in the administration? I'm changing careers. What do I do? That sounds different than someone who comes to you and says, hey, I'm really passionate about climate change. So that's specific. I think I want to work at EPA or maybe even labor. And I have been looking in the Plum book and I found a couple of jobs that may be a fit. Hey, Reta, do you have 15 minutes to talk to me about that? Of course, Reta would say yes. Of course, I would say yes, because it's this concept of you have to start your fire and then someone else can pour gasoline on it. You can't bring someone else a match and say, oh, can you light my match, right? It's just like, let me remember, because I was taking some notes here. It was Councilmember Bonds who talked about holding yourself accountable, right? So hold yourself accountable and light your own match first. So I would say that is the most important thing, because they have to pick someone. There are thousands of jobs waiting to be filled. They won't all be filled with all of the people that they know. And so if there is a percentage of strangers, right? I mean, I was a stranger essentially. If there is a percentage of strangers, get yourself in that percentage.
So let me add to that. Thank you so much, if I may. One thing that we can do, and I think that probably the DC Federation of Democratic Women, or the Federation of Democratic Women in the country, if this is nationwide, the way to do it is that in my case, I belong to 4 different organizations, and 4 of them were submitting names to the administration. So in my case was a Hispanic, it was the Obama 40 Latinos 44, which is a group of Latino appointees. They took my name and they would just forward my resume if I wanted to. I think the DC Democratic Women also has that form, and I'm not entirely sure. But there are organizations that are called, you belong to the organizations. They ask you if you're interested. There is a questionnaire, and then you add your resume, and through the organizations you can get in, or you can get an interview. So that's another way that is practical if you want to take a chance and join the administration.
You know, it's to piggyback on what Anna was saying. Anna, is just also, again, just great to see you. And when you made your comments, I was like, oh my God, you know, how and when we hadn't seen each other. But to hear about your pathway is so exciting. And I think the thing that I want to also add to that question is that, you know, it's hard work to get an appointment. The work you have done before is going to be the foundation that will propel you into the aspiration that you would have to serve your country. I'd also like to say there is no perfect way. Matter of fact, there are very imperfect ways to get into an appointment, because everyone's path is a little bit different. We all fill out the forms. We all try to go to get groups to support us. We all understand it is important to have others vouching for the work that you have done. But at the end of the day, it's the work that we, I believe, as individuals and all of you would put in to drill down and see what is behind the title of the job and the work that needs to be done, because it is a title. And actually, I like what Theola was saying. People who are also very, very specific, or who have specific experiences, also can be successful. So you can be a generalist. You can be a much more person that is targeted. You can have a certain set of skill sets or a certain set of interests. So no, you don't have to be worked in the campaign. No, you do not have to be someone that others know, because your work is going to speak for itself. However, if you have all those other things, does that help you? Absolutely. In my first experience in the Clinton administration, I came out of local government. I had been serving in the first female mayor's administration. I had worked for Sharon Pratt Kelly. And so I had actually taken a sabbatical to work in the campaign. And so, you know, like we were all saying, everybody's work is different and unique, but it is, I believe, the skill sets that you bring. I don't believe I could have been successful in obtaining an appointment if I did not have the background or the experience, because at the end of the day, you have a job to do, and that job is serving your country in a particular area. And now all those jobs have gotten even more specific. So I think when Theola was saying, do the homework, or Dorinda was saying, do the homework, do the research, absolutely critical to understand what is behind that title of that job in that agency. And one of the best places to find out is from others who have served in the administration. It doesn't matter whether they're Democrats or Republicans, they may have served differently, they've served in different administrations, but it's just good to be able to talk to people to try to get a gauge, not just people who have served in the position, but people who have served in the agencies. Always look to see who are the civil servants that you might know, who are family and friends that can tell you about an agency or a place that you might also want to go in. They have the inside knowledge, they have inside information, and they can help you not only prepare to go after an appointment, but they will be very valuable if you land an appointment and land in a particular agency or in the White House.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, put my video back on. Oh, okay. Thank you, Rita Jo. I wanted to go back to Theola to ask her a question regarding the importance of networking, packaging yourself, and identifying your superpower. And let me explain why I'm going directly to her and why I invited her to join us here today is because I had the honor of being a part of a Presidential Appointments 101 event, 2 of them back in December. And Theola was one of the speakers at the event, and I kept in contact with her. I kind of contacted her out of the blue, and she remembered me. And she had such words of wisdom and insight that she shared that I thought it was important that she share it with us here today, because networking is important, but also your superpower. Theola, please share.
Yes, thank you, Dorinda. You have to think about your life, your career search as a story, and stories have characters. You are the main character, of course, right? And there is there's the internal self, and then reflection, and then how you outwardly as a character behave as the main character. And then there are other characters, people who you think can help you, people who need to hire you. Everybody knows the #1 interview question, which is, tell me about yourself. That is the #1 interview question. And that is a question that all of us hate. Some of us who have been managers, they have asked that question. I know I have asked that question. That is the question that you have to be able to answer in order to do everything essentially in life. As a business owner, you do it when someone says, so what do you do? So what's your business, right? When you are going for a job, so tell me about yourself. And that is the opportunity not, oh gosh, this again, where you have to really step up and be able to articulate into words what your superpower is. Because all of us have a superpower, something that we do better than anybody else. And it's about owning that and feeling like it's good enough, right? You know, your superpower could be, if there is an event coming up with 10 principals and 500 people in the public, and, you know, let's say like a series of community meetings about a zoning issue, right? That's a very complicated process with a lot of stakeholders. And your job is to organize everything, making sure all the speakers have the materials, that all the PowerPoints work, that the invitations go out on time to the public. And so if your superpower is you throw any complicated big event and I will make sure that all the trains run on time, that's your superpower. And that's what you have to say when someone says, tell me about yourself, because then maybe in the administration, you can go be a special assistant, right? You can go be a chief of staff. And so it's about first knowing that you have to answer, tell me about yourself. 2, you have to identify what is it that I do better than anybody else, my superpower. And then 3, you have to actually explain it in a way that's confident, exciting, interested, so that others can feel that energy, they can see that spark, that flame, and then be attracted to you, want to know more from you.
You know, I'd like to piggyback on Theola's comments about networking and about the experiences in that. We all of us, I'm sure on this call, and definitely the speakers, belong to so many organizations and so many associations. And we have experience and we have the ability to think, how do I take I think one of your questions was, how do I look at my skills and transfer it into a particular position or a particular agency? Because I have to always keep coming back. I tell people, it's not just a job. It is service. That's what, and it says federal service, and it is service to your country. If you keep that in mind, to me, it's the passion that you have for wanting to serve will also come through and come out in your interviews, in your conversations, in the networking that you would do to meet others who may have a connection to those who are making decisions. I'll give another example. Right now, we see what's going on with the pandemic, and people who have experience in healthcare. Well, it's not just about serving now just in HHS, it's about Health and Human Services. This pandemic is on the minds of the president and the vice president every single day, every waking minute. And they are continuously looking for people who have the experience and who have the expertise, who want to transition their work experience into the government. So I tell people all the time, you might not have thought you wanted to go into the government or to be of service, but look around you at what the presidential priorities are and your background and experience and say, you know what, I am a healthcare specialist. I'm an expert in a particular area. This could be a moment that I could transition my career into federal service to be helpful to my country. The other thing, another area so many people fail to look at is the issues around technology, digital, cyber security, and others is one of the biggest things that our nation will be confronting. People who have those kinds of skills can look not in one agency, but throughout the federal government, including the White House, to say, I have some of those skills. And I want to take those skills in now and transfer it into the government. People may have never even thought about it because they have had their life on one track. But now people from private sectors going into the public sector is going into the private sector. You've got academia, you've got trade associations, you've got entrepreneurs and executives. There are so many ways that people should not count themselves out of a job. But to say, if that's something, if you want to be of service to the president of the United States and to your fellow citizens, you might have to say, you know what? Maybe it's my time that I really am looking and being interested in service. And let me look at my background. I mean, lawyers. I tell lawyers all the time, it's not just now about going into, I was fortunate, I went to a private firm when I came out of law school. But one of the most dynamic places to work is in the federal agencies as a lawyer. But you don't have to work within the legal department. You can transfer your skills as a lawyer, as a problem solver, as someone who looks at and who is constantly analyzing and coming up with solutions to see across the board what are the different levels of jobs. So of course, as our Congresswoman said, there's the cabinet. Then there is what they call the sub-cabinet. Then they call the cabinet officials that then become the levels that Dorinda laid out in the Plum book. So you do have to be specific. You have to know exactly what it is that you're interested in. And the best way to do it, if you've never served, is to ask somebody. It's to ask somebody or participate in sessions like this that so many of you are giving us the honor to spend a few minutes with you today on.
And Reta, I'd like to tag on, especially given your background and area of expertise. One of the questions that we are getting in the chat is, do you have suggestions or advice for women who worked internationally and are interested in serving in an international post with the UN or USAID?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, when I practiced law, before going into the administration, I had, as a practicing attorney, I was of counsel in a big firm. And I worked with agencies like World Bank and USAID and IMF and International Monetary Fund and others. And I worked with clients, corporate clients who had business with the Commerce Department and others. But, and I had an interest in going into an international space as a career move. So when Secretary Clinton was appointed as a secretary, one of the things that I immediately wanted to do was to not only look at the Department of State, but also look at the Department of Commerce, look at USAID, look at agencies way beyond just the State Department. I was fortunate to get to work in the State Department. So what I say to people who want to transition their careers, especially Black women, especially women of color, and women, period, it is not enough of us in the national security apparatus. However, there are numerous, I mean, I'm talking numerous jobs, and of all types. They're looking for analysts, they're looking for researchers, they're looking for administrators, they're looking for lawyers, they're looking for managers of all shapes and fashions. So I say, please go beyond the Foreign Service and the civil service, because everybody's not trying to be a Foreign Service officer, but civil servants at the State Department make up the backbone of that agency. Look at the United States Agency for International Development. Look at the UN. Look at other agencies. We have defense, the Defense Department. I mean, you could just kind of go on and on about the different places inside of our government that you can look for a job. So if you have experience in a region, and you're an expert in a particular country, or you are leaning your career in that direction, you can, I always tell people, look inside that agency and see, are they doing that kind of work? You would be surprised if you are a China specialist, an Asia specialist, an Africa specialist, a Latin American specialist. Look at places, always dive deep in agencies like the Department of Commerce. Always look at places that you might not even remember or know about. The Export-Import Bank, which is right across from the White House. You can also look at the old OPIC, which is now DFA, which is agencies that is all about our exporting and our importing, and about how they give loans and work with business and small business. Look at Small Business Administration. I'm sure Anna could also speak about the international arm of the SBA.
Yes.
So every agency, energy has international arms. I mean, really, agriculture. If you look across the board of the federal government, there are 8, and go inside of the agencies, you can begin to see, oh, there are positions because that would match my experience in the international field that I can then apply for or be interested in and want to work in. So I say, don't count yourself out, definitely count yourself in.
Yeah, that was a surprise for me to go into the SBA and find that it's an entire section dedicated to exporting small businesses, talent and products outside of the United States. And they needed a whole entire set of people. And apart from that, I also had the pleasure of serving as a delegate for the Asian Pacific Economic Council, representing women, United States women in the, around the Pacific Rim. So I had the pleasure of traveling with Secretary Clinton to St. Petersburg. And representing women there. I also traveled to, my own Mexico City in different places, and I was doing a little bit of international work, but SBA has international opportunities as well to serve. So that's really great advice. Every single agency has an angle to go beyond what we normally think they would do.
Okay, I have a question from the chat about, it says, I'm a scientist turned strategic intelligence consultant for a Fortune 500 pharmaceutical company looking to pivot into the Department of Health and Human Services and advise on science policy and public-private partnerships to increase U.S. health security preparedness. FDA, NIH, CDC are likely the best fits. However, I have zero experience, campaign experience or policy experience, and my only federal experience has consisted of internships and fellowships. I also live in Georgia. Any advice on standing out in my application materials?
But there is also, you don't have to be a political appointee. You can just be get a career in government. And that's assured that you don't have to exit out in 4 years or 8 years, so you can continue there a little longer. So I don't know. Reta, you have a little bit more experience on how to become a career government employee. I think you're muted. You're muted.
Muted. Raises a very good question. She says, I'm a scientist. I am sure right now, President Biden has said he places a premium on the science. So someone like yourself with your background, your experience, your education is a valuable individual. Being a woman is also, I think, exceptionally valuable because we already know that women are not as well represented in the STEM, the science and technology and the engineering and mathematics field. But if you're in Atlanta, whoever said that they're in Atlanta, I'm from Georgia, so I can relate. You think, oh, that's so far away, but I want to be in Washington. Actually, the majority of government agencies have regional bureaus,
Yes.
have regional offices. And you would be surprised that throughout our country, one should research, if I do not want to leave Colorado, if I don't want to leave New York, if I don't want to leave Indiana, if I don't want to leave Georgia, look to see if the bureau, the agency that you are interested in or the jobs you're interested in have a regional bureau. So therefore, it may be some right there, which I know it is, in Atlanta. Do they do the kind of work on the health field that you probably want to do? The answer is probably yes. We have so much focus placed on our healthcare agencies right now, namely places within Health and Human Services. You've got the big CDC, the CDC is in Atlanta. You've got other infectious disease agencies in Atlanta. You have academic institutions that are working with federal government agencies. So there's a lot of ways to segue into that government job. You might start out in an academic setting of a group that has a government contract, and you can learn more about that work and transferring your careers, or you can just look directly at that regional bureau. I cannot believe, I don't have my cell phone right here to Google it, but I will look at it while someone else is talking. I cannot believe that HHS is not in your region, Health and Human Services. And so if you don't want to leave Atlanta, if that's the scientists or others, look at, is agriculture, we know the Department of Agriculture has a big agriculture bureau in the state of Georgia. We know Social Security administrations federally are all over every state in this country. So you have to, like you say, there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. Look for what is going to suit your life and your family's life. If you cannot move to Washington, or you have no interest in moving to Washington, but you want to work for the government, you want to work for the president, then look to see what is in your own backyard and what you can apply for. And those things are also in the Plum book. Those jobs are also in the Plum book.
Thank you, Reta. I have a question for Theola. Someone has asked, can being an advocate for the underserved, despondent, disabled minorities, or et cetera, be a superpower?
Yeah, thank you for that, because there's a little bit of back and forth in the chat, so it's easier to talk it through. So it's a superpower when you describe how you fight for them, right? And so to say, oh, I fight, I never give up. Okay, that's okay, like we're getting there, right? But are you creative in your fighting, right? Like I basically exhaust all avenues and I'm gonna research everything, or I fight in ways that are unexpected. Like I actually get people who disagree with us to then come on our side. That's how I fight for these folks. I actually have a superpower in actually convincing people to then change their minds to support us. So it's in the how you do it, because Theola can say, oh, I fight for the underdog, right? And so can Anna. Anna can say, oh, hi, I'm Anna, I fight for the underdog. So see, trading out Anna and Theola, it's not unique to you, right? You have to say how you do it to then have it be unique to you. So that's how you know it's a superpower. Like no one else can say it but you.
And can I just go back to the HHS question? I just Googled it. And if you Google hhs.gov, Region 4, right there in Atlanta. And then if you look at it, look at all the positions, government positions. I'm not sure how many are political, but they're all the types of offices that the scientists and others who may want to work in this field. Center for Disease Control is there, Center for Medicare, Community Living, Children and Families, Secretary for Preparedness and Response, Minority Health. You'd be surprised because there are, I think it's 9 regions as I'm looking up in the Health and Human Services, if I'm correct in my little quick research. So you don't have to leave, as I say, you don't have to leave home. You could sometimes, there may be limited positions, but there will be some positions.
Okay, thank you, Rita. I have a question for all 3 ladies, and someone asked if it just moved. If I made it to, okay, it just moved up.
Oh,
Okay.
the second round question?
Yeah, if I made it, yeah, to the second interview and an appointment. Yes, you saw that one?
I did, yeah, I can read it. If I made it to the second interview in an appointment position and was not focused enough in my response to the tell me about yourself and was not given feedback after being denied the position, how do I stay in the pipeline and freshen the minds of the department that interviewed me? The one question that I have about that is that they are assuming that they were not focused enough in the tell me about yourself, or I wonder if that was the feedback specifically. But then the question is, how do you stay fresh and then top of mind? Okay, she says, yes, I am assuming. Okay. I think you get better at that, right? If you're assuming that was it, and you don't know if it was, but if you feel like, if you didn't feel like you were crisp enough on that, then work on that for yourself. Every interview is feedback, even if you don't get the feedback. The experience of it is feedback, because we can think in our heads all day long, but when someone asks us, tell me about yourself, how you respond, that is, I call it data. All of it is data. It's actually informational, like data, and the experience is the data for how your search is going. And so I would say that as number 1. Number 2, going back to our theme about being that gracious person who people want to work with, I think that you keep in touch and just say, thank you for the opportunity to meet you, just some language around hoping that down the line, you might be able to connect again, but just really staying top of mind. I believe in advertising or sales, they say it's like 7 touches to get the sale, or how many times have we now seen some very specific Super Bowl commercials like over and over and over? It's okay. Like you get to know every line, right? You start laughing at the same points. And so that repetition, I think, is important to then keep going. So I was just saying to someone else in the chat, like, keep going, don't stop, right? So you had one thing, it didn't work out, keep going.
Okay, I have a question I want to pose to all 3 of you ladies, because since all 3 of you were presidential appointees at some point, there are certain things, I think, Theola, we discussed it at the Presidential Appointments 101 workshop that we attended in December. But what did you encounter with dealing with deep diving into your own history? Once you got the call and they said, hey, we're interested in having you come to the White House. And you're like, oh no, I still have student loans. I owe this person. So credit reports, your relationships. Oh no, I just kicked my boyfriend to the curb and now they're gonna come interview him for my security clearance, work history, what's on the web browser, social media accounts, all of those things. What advice would you give based upon your experience that you had to run and take care of once you got that call that you were being considered an appointee for an appointed position? Go ahead, Anna.
I have one. I don't know if I should be saying this. I don't know if I should be saying this.
Okay.
But that was very important. That was it was first couple of months of President Obama. I had 2 ladies cleaning my house for a couple of years. And I discovered that paying them in cash and not paying taxes for them is a huge mess. So that, it's not that I didn't want to, it's just that it didn't occur to me that I was out of compliance. If you pay somebody over $600 a year, then that becomes a 1099 and also the things anyway. So that was the big thing that could have tripped me, that I had a cleaning crew that I was not paying taxes for. So I am sorry this is recorded, now everybody knows it, I fixed it, I did well, but that's another thing that you never think, you never know what's gonna come out. And another thing is I had 2 preteen children, and I told them, please don't do anything stupid that will screw my career. So I was watching my children very closely as well.
You know, she raises a very, very big point. Part of what I and all of us, any of us who are in the national security apparatus, we have to get a clearance.
Yes.
And because of the position that I had, not only to have a clearance to work in the first time in the White House, but in the State Department, those clearances go up to top secret and beyond. And so they evaluate you not only on your entry into the department, but the entire time you are there. So you may be filling out paperwork on somewhat of a regular basis. I know it's yearly, and I think the intervals is even shorter than that. The reason being is they want to know anything and everything about you, and they have that right because you're representing your country with foreign leaders and foreign governments and foreign people. And they want to know who you are dealing with, who you have dealt with in your past, as well as ongoing. So even while we are in the job, we are constantly filling out that paperwork. So Anna and Theola are correct. Your reputation is everything. And it is built long before you start thinking about, you know, Joe Biden winning and you wanting to go in the administration. It is throughout the course of your life. That's why when people say to me, you know, I do social media and people want to, you know, say negative things. I have nothing negative to say about anybody. I am always I'm just a positive, optimistic individual. And the reason why I keep that optimism is that there's enough negative energy out here. And so social media is another footprint that people can now go on. And I tell young people, friends, family, I don't care who it is, when I see things that they put out there, I call them and say, do you really want that out there? Quite frankly, the answer is no for them, because they're doing something crazy. And they should be taking that back, because you never know what job you want for the rest of your life. So social media now follows you everywhere. In the clearance process, even joining the administration, they go back to high school. There are no secrets from the FBI. Let me say that again. No secrets from the FBI. No secrets from the security contractors that are looking into your life. They know what you did in high school. They know what you did in college if you were fortunate to go. They know what you have done on your jobs. They are going to interview people throughout your life, and they will not clear you to be able to access the kind of information that you probably will need in these high-level appointments to do your job, unless you come away with a reputation of having served, you know, been an individual that has served with respect and dignity throughout your career. So what I say is that you're gonna have to fill out a lot of paperwork. And in that paperwork, they want to tell you to list everything, because trust me, they know. The other thing is, sometimes people can get a little confused because your name may be spelled like someone else's name. So you have to also make sure that they're investigating you, not this other person that they found and they think it's you. So if you even know throughout your life that there's been people who have your same name and may even come from basically some of the similarly situated with jobs or careers or whatever, you want to make sure that you indicate that to them so that when they're out there doing those evaluations, they don't get you confused with someone else. But I would tell you, there are no secrets from the investigator. You need to tell them everything on the piece of paper, and when they come to finally interview you, and they will, because that's just, you're trying to be of service. So to be of service, this is all part of it.
If I'm correct, it might take a couple of months for them to clear you, right?
That's right. Yes, it does.
Yeah, I remember that. I was approached. In February, and I think by April I was cleared. So
Anna is absolutely right, because now, see, in my job, having left the administration, I have traveled. I've been fortunate and blessed to have traveled not only extensively in the State Department, which they can just pull up all those records, But I'm currently in a job with a think tank that I travel extensively, and I attempt to try to keep up with, who I'm meeting with, the places I've gone, where I've traveled, the dates. Sometimes you probably know the months, but trust me, they know.
I
They
remember.
So asked a question along the lines of that was, well, how did Trump's family get through security clearances? Let's leave that alone.
I don't know.
Yeah, we're not. See what I said? We're not being negative. We don't know.
We do not know.
Yeah, I just wanted to just piggyback on what Reta Jo was saying just about social media. And so it's very important for you to be very clear on what you want to speak about and what you don't want to speak about. And if you are called up and there's a question about your postings, then you have to be able to be ready to say, okay, I want to speak out about police shootings, right? That's something that is very important to me. And so I'm not going to not speak out about that. Does that mean that you should apply to the Department of Justice? Maybe not, right? Because that's an agency that is right in the middle of that. So sometimes people are like, well, are you saying that I can't say anything? No, I'm not saying that. I am very vocal on Twitter about media and how it's structurally racist and how there's so many things that need to change, right? If they called me and said, well, we have a problem with these tweets, I'd say, okay, I may have to not do this because I feel very passionate about that issue, right? But if I see Trump doing something that maybe I don't agree with, or let's say like January 6th happened, right? Obviously that was a quite egregious, terrible moment, right? Everybody knows that. Do you really need to weigh in on that politically, right? Like, is that your personal expertise, right? Like, is the world gonna miss your tweet or your Facebook post about January 6th, right? It's not. So it's not worth it for you to weigh in on that and say something political, even if it's like, I can't believe that these folks, then later someone's like, well, you actually publicly commented on this, right? And then you might say, well, Senator so-and-so, said it publicly. Great, that's Senator so-and-so, right? He's already a senator. That's not you. You know what I mean? I was actually surprised in my process because I had to go from a journalist who could never really comment. And even though I had left journalism, I still wasn't used to actually weighing in. So when Freddie Gray happened, I recall being very specific about just retweeting things, right? Like I was not adding commentary. I was just retweeting things that were pointing out the complete, egregiousness of the moment. And I remember when I was going through the process, my then boss, or the woman who became my boss, was like, yeah, there was like some question about your tweets on Freddie Gray. And I was like, that's funny, because I know that I didn't say anything, but if there was a conversation, I was ready for it. So I just say to be intentional and have thought about what you're doing and know that if someone asks you about it, you will have an answer.
Yeah. I don't think we can say enough about what Theola just said. As a practicing attorney, I live a life where we're always thinking about liability. As a diplomat, I'm always thinking about, you're not supposed, your opinion is the opinion of the government of which you serve. And so one has to just maintain vigilance. None of us are perfect. We've all probably said something, done something, but there is always an answer that you should be prepared to give them, because there's just, as they say, you can run, but you can't hide.
Okay, one of the questions we received here was regarding boards and commissions. I've been appointed by 5 North Carolina governors, and I'm interested in a presidential appointment on a board and commission. What advice would you give on that?
I think that, I'm glad the questioner brought that up. I also see some people say that they've just had volunteer experience and they're ready to make a pivot. I think throughout all of our careers and lives, we've made a pivot into something that we're very passionate about. if they've served on a board and there's a federal government companion type of board, those are great experiences for something like that. And they're also in the Plum book, and they'll be filling those positions. They're not like, that's not on the top of mind. Joe Biden's only been there 30 days, I think, 30 plus days. But you know, those positions are very important to the president and the vice president, and they will be filling those positions. And you can be putting your paperwork in for those and getting others to help to advocate for you, as well as none of us have mentioned also congressional leadership can also, congressional members can help you lead, be part of the network that you have, that you should seek out to help you in your search for an appointment.
Okay, thank you, ladies, for your time and insight. And we're moving on to the next part of our program, because we do want to end at 1 o'clock. We did ask you to be here for a certain time period. I don't want to hold you hostage. So we're moving on to, I think we did the hard high level discussions. We covered, hold on, let's see here. Deep dive into your history. We spoke about credit reports, relationships, work history, your web browser, social media accounts, professional media, Google searches, publications, and before and during and after you submit your application. I can't see the words beyond there. Reach out to your networks for a shout out. Okay, got it. We kind of covered that in the questions and answers that went through there. So moving on to the next, the final part of our program is we, following the November elections, members of the DC Federation of Democratic Women, we met and discussed how we as an organization might work with contacts within the new administration to help Democratic women who had already applied for positions with the Biden-Harris administration. We realize we are just a local entity, but we know we have contacts somewhere. There are 3 ladies right here who were former appointees. But as a result, a group of DC Federation Democratic Women volunteers met, and we formed the ad hoc DC Federation of Democratic Women Commission on Presidential Appointments. Our mission was to supplement the efforts of those who had already applied by collecting their resumes and submitting an electronic book of qualified candidates to the White House, cabinet agencies, and boards and commissions. An offshoot of the commission was the creation of this workshop. So that's how this workshop came to fruition, along with the fact that I attended to that a former, that a political appointee had hosted back in December. And the idea kind of stuck in my head. I said, wow, we should share this with a wider audience. So that's how this came to fruition. So right now, I want you to meet the members of our commission. Hazel Thomas.
Good morning. As she said, my name is Hazel Thomas, and I'm honored to be the chair of the Commission on Political Appointments. And it's also my honor to introduce you to the members of our commission. And they are, Candace Adderley, Andrea Bagwell, Esquire, Bernita Carmichael, and these are ladies that are, they're working behind the scenes. They're all there. Bernita Carmichael, Sapphire Harris, Linda Jefferson, Susan Baranano, also Sapphire Harris, Linda Jefferson, Vivian Wiles, Allison Young. And our ex officio members are the chairpersons of the 2 clubs that form the Federation. And so our ex officio members are Jeanette Mobley, who's president of the DC Democratic Women's Club, and also Estelle Mathis Lloyd, who is the president of the Metropolitan Women's Democratic Club. And I just wanted to say to all those ladies, and of course our president, Dorinda White, who is president of the DC Federation of Democratic Women. I just wanted to say to all the ladies, you can't see me now, I got my cup in hand, just wanted to say salud.
Okay.
Salud.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So get started today. We have on our next slide, actually a photo of the, can you go to the next slide, Bernita? Which is to the slide that shows the actual page that the White House put up after they dropped the Build Back Better link. They put up another site that you can go to submit your resume for opportunities with the Biden-Harris administration. And it's at whitehouse.gov/get-involved/join us. And there you can apply for administration positions. They list them very carefully. And at the bottom, they also guide you to, if you're looking for a career service opportunity, you can go to usajobs.gov in order to apply there for career service positions. So we are a women's organization, and our primary focus is to support Democratic women in the DC area. Although our Congresswoman Norton stressed African-American appointees, our commission has decided to focus on Democratic women who are Hispanic, Latinx, African-American, and women of color as political appointees. So your next step is to go to the White House website, submit your resume through its resume portal, and you can also go to our DC Federation of Democratic Women Commission.com website, where you will get information on how to submit your information to our database after answering a questionnaire. You will also find details and a link to the Plum book, as well as an organizational chart of the Biden-Harris administration. Here's a sample of the questionnaire that must be completed to determine if we can supplement your efforts. And it's very simplistic. And I want to thank you for joining us today. This has been a lot of information, and I hope you took notes, because this was recorded, and we will have it on our Facebook page and on our webpage, DCFDW.com. But at this point, this concludes this workshop. We hope you gather information that will be useful in your quest to be a political appointee. It's worth the effort. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge the presidents of the two clubs that make up the DC Federation of Democratic Women. So a few words from Jeanette Mobley, who is the president of the DC Democratic Women's Club, and Estelle Mathis Lloyd of the Metropolitan Democratic Women's Club. Ladies, Jeanette.
Thank you, Madam President, and I want to say hello to everyone. Madam President Dorinda, you are to be commended for conceiving this idea. And you brought it to fruition under the able leadership of our own Hazel Thomas and her magnificent committee. I thoroughly enjoyed all three panelists. The information was wonderful. A lot of people think that when you're job seeking, they want you to hand them a job and say, here you go with it. But I tell you, I go back to the proverb, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. So all the wonderful information that was shared today by Theola, Recio, and Anna was well received, good information that you'll be able to use for no matter what type of job or appointment that you go after. So again, thank you very much for everyone. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
And thank you, Jeanette. Estelle Mathis Lloyd. Is Estelle still on? She may have had to drop.
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, there you go. Okay, there you go.
Thank you. I echo each and every word Jeanette said. Thank you so much, Madam President, Madam Chairperson Hazel Thomas, and to all the presenters. You made it so real. There's an old saying that you brought home the bacon. We could actually see ourselves applying for a job. Not me, I'm retired, but all of you young folks who are out there. There is a word that said, don't count yourself out, count yourself in. We hope the information that was shared today will help you receive a rewarding future. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Estelle. And I'd like to most importantly, thank our three guest speakers. They chimed in just in time. They shared information, personal experiences, which is what was the most important thing, because you can have a forum and someone just goes and reads off, A through Z something, but you ladies really opened up amongst us and shared what you experienced, how you experienced it, and what some of the obstacles and learning processes that you had to go through to actually be a political appointee. So I think the main impetus when I came up with this concept back in November was I said, wow, there are a lot of people here in DC who worked hard on campaigns, both in battleground states. They worked hard here. They're looking around and people are coming in by the droves to work in the administration. They live here. Why shouldn't they have access to this information to see whether or not they can also aspire to move into a presidential appointed position? So that was the main impetus for moving this forward and creating this, not only the commission, but also this workshop. So I'd like to thank the guests, and I'd like to ask each guest, if you'd like to be contacted by our participants, please put your information in the chat, your LinkedIn, or however you'd like to be contacted, if they'd like to follow up with you. And all Democratic women are invited to go to the DC Federation of Democratic Women.com website and click on the club of your choice to join our organization. When you become a club member, you are automatically a member of the DC Federation. A final word of acknowledgement for our National Federation of Democratic Women Eastern Regional Director, Elizabeth Duarte. Can you put the slide up, please? Who has supported us today as our Zoom master and our guide as we took on this important project. So thank you, Liz, for always, I think it's the next slide, for being there for us. And we really, there you are. There's Liz. Liz, would you like to share a few words?
Thank you very much. I just love being with everyone here in DC. You guys are phenomenal. Do a wonderful, wonderful job. I'm always learning things when I'm kind of from the back room into your workshop. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Liz. And one last thought here. Think about joining our organization and making a difference. There's strength in numbers, and women together, we had the strength in numbers to have some important Democratic wins, locally and nationally, by way of Georgia and all the way to the White House. When women organize, we win. So the last two slides that we have here on our slide deck are resource information slides. You will be able to find this online and on our website, but basically we went through and pulled together links, direct links to resources on the internet, from the White House to ascertainment letter for the 2020 presidential election, the Plum book, the presidential transition guide, government manuals. We have a host of information there that's going to help you on your journey to wherever you decide to go. So it's up to you to take a look at it. You can do a screenshot of it now, or you can wait and review this whole video again. But with that said, we have 5 minutes on the clock. We finished way ahead of time. Ladies, I'd like to especially thank Bernita Carmichael, who assisted me directly when I was actually going through a time period. I'm the caregiver for an 82-year-old father, and she came through and made certain that I stayed on point and helped me to move this forward. And as I said before, teamwork makes the dream work. And we did a great teamwork, ladies. So we need to give each other a big round of applause. And I thank you all for joining us today. We had about 300, how many, Liz? 390, how many registrants, Liz? 397?
Yeah, we were up to 350.
350 registrants.
Yes.
So I think that we have given you information that you can use for yourself and share with others. Please feel free to add your information in the chat. And please feel free to look for the information of our speakers if you'd like to reach out to them, because I'm certain they would probably help to facilitate you or give you some guidance and insight as you move forward in your journey to either using the Plum book or aspiring to be a presidential appointee. So with that, my name is Dorinda White, president of the DC Federation of Democratic Women. We all thank you for being here today, and we wish you a happy, safe, and wonderful weekend. Thank you.